My heritage is from the tropical rainforest El Yunque Mountains of Puerto Rico. As I can recall in my early memory, my family lived on the hilltop mountains in a small, humble home made of concrete, surrounded by small frogs and quenepas. I used to play in a small stream of water which led me to beautiful, mysterious hidden rivers and huge waterfalls. They were like hidden gems. I was not born in Puerto Rico, but I remember during my early stages of my childhood experiencing rainforests hanging from vines. It was a very, very beautiful time. That was my childhood backyard. Music was introduced to me, the dancing. My childhood lullaby is bomba. Fierce drummers. I remember women in their white dresses displaying powerful emotions, drummers hitting their drums fearlessly. A traditional dance and musical style of Puerto Rico. Its origins are rooted in the island history of Afro-Puerto Rican culture. It's a creative, interactive relationship between the dancer and the drummer. That was my life in Puerto Rico. A perfect island where I was placed by rainforest. Early years of my memory, nature and music played a huge part of my upbringing. Freedom, love, my happiness. Most of all, I was safe. That gradually all was stripped away from me. In 1968, the Puerto Rico economy pressured my Puerto Rican family to leave the island of Puerto Rico. In my memory, we boarded into a cargo airplane among other Puerto Rican families. We landed in New York City, and I remember living in Lower Manhattan. There were 5-story, multi-story homes connected to one another and streets made of bricks pavements. Puerto Rican families will hang in their fire escape while their children roam the streets and play in empty lots. It was nothing compared to Puerto Rico, the island where I came from. My father comes from humble beginnings. Jose Inez Ramos Rivera, born in 1937, San Juan, Puerto Rico. His mother died giving birth to him. His father and his elder sisters had to raise him from infancy. I can only imagine how life was for him living in the island of Puerto Rico. My grandfather, who I don't know, nor do I know his name or where his timeline begins, a very powerful influence in my father's life, helping my father to attend a trade school and also finding a way to go to the mainland for a better future, to the main island of Manhattan. My father's first residency to the state was 1954. Latinos grew up in an island within a city called El Barrio, Spanish Harlem. In the 1950s and 60s in New York City, my father lived in a new generation of neighborhoods full of Latinos. Blacks and Latinos guarded their territories. There were gang members who were territorial. He may have had dozens of fistfights. Or maybe he was just a kid with a dream. I feel my father was a very confident and very arrogant. He was a handsome young black man who wore black fitted suits, straight ties, black shiny shoes, who walked the street with a swagger. Music gradually became his love. Boogaloo Blues was his favorite. In the early 60s, I believe my father became more involved with music. I have no history where he worked, but here he is. This picture was taken while he was playing in a nightclub. Music was a powerful influence in my father's life. I had heard his father taught him to play congas, and my father became a great player. My father grew up in an environment of musicians in Puerto Rico. Music was the only thing that made my father happy. My father met my mother in a nightclub, born in Mayagüez, Puerto Rico. He fell in love at first sight. So, story is, she had a current boyfriend at a nightclub, and while she was standing there, my father spotted her and took a swing at her boyfriend and knocked him out and grabbed my mother by the arm, and the rest is history. My mother was a beautiful young lady. Here she is in her teenage years. There were many parties and get-togethers and family gatherings. I truly believe my father had a beautiful life. He had a happy life with my mother, and as soon as my brother was born, my father was a very happy person. I want to believe that he had dreams he wanted to accomplish and fulfill, and to have a better life along with his father, who has struggled so hard to bring his children to New York City to live a better life. But he suddenly fell ill. After arriving from work, my father discovered his dad's dead body in his apartment. He held him in his arms, and my aunt both said he never cried, nor did he show any remorse. The death of my grandfather was a turning point for my father. It dramatized him. His journey through grief was very hard for him. It must have been a constant echo of memories and struggles that he went through with his father, and without his guidance, the enduring love that transcended even through death, it did not save my father. It changed him. He suffered a deep depression. Every morning, I will follow my father upstairs to the rooftop where he fed his pigeons and when he would stare out into the skyline of New York City. The significant void left by my grandfather's absence manifested in my father's behavior. The struggles my father had was a very serious one. Gradually, slowly, my father started to hear voices. His very first incident, I remember sitting in the family car and he got out and walked onto the street and got underneath a truck. Another incident, my mother started to yell at him in the car, having his hands off the steering wheel, and the car started swaying to side, and we held each other tight. After the incident, the keys were removed from his possession and he was never ever to drive ever again. He had to be hospitalized immediately. These sudden panic attacks was a sign something was not quite right with my father. Family members never intervened. Everyone kept to themselves. His family adored him and gave him respect. His illness consumed him, turning love into rage. It was a taboo to talk about your family. My father's violence was a storm I learned to weather. I made a mistake while playing with my younger sibling, and my father's sudden rage terrified me. And I remember running, terrified, his voice thick with rage and anger. I ran towards the only place I knew to go, was my Aunt Rose. She had raised my father from infancy, and because he respected her deeply, I knew I would be in a safe place with her. I ran into her apartment. I saw her in the kitchen cooking while she was listening to her novellas. I ran into her bedroom, and then I pressed my little small body against the wall, trembling under her bed. Many days and nights, I hid away in my Aunt Rose's apartment, where I found my own refuge. She was my only hope. Unexpectedly, she vanished. No hugs, no kisses, no parties. she was no longer around in my life. During the absence of my Aunt Rose, I felt abandoned. I was left in the care of my maternal grandmother, herself a woman haunted by her own past. She often overlooked my needs. I remember crying myself to sleep, my tiny little body aching with hunger, wailing in the darkness for my mother to return to place a bottle of my favorite chocolate milk in my hands. I was left behind, alone with my grandmother, a woman who should have loved and protected me, but instead caused me pain. Her hands never comforted me. Her words never guided me. I was just a child waiting for my mother to come home. As a child, I remember my mother getting up every morning and dressing to go to work. My mother came to New York City with no more than survival skills. My mother grew up with significant responsibilities. Her own mother, my grandmother, had been discharged from the mental hospital. No therapy, no healing, just sent home with her illness. And my mother never had a chance to be a child. There were no dolls, no books, no school, just survival, just silence. Just a little girl trying to care for a woman who couldn't care for herself. When she came to New York City, she brought that silence with her. She didn't know how to protect me. No one had ever protected her. From being a migrant to New York City, she immediately started to work at the Garment District Center in Lower Manhattan. And I remember my mother sewing and ironing beautiful dresses at the factories. And during that time, she worked for many hours for hard labor. And this was an insult for my father. Instead, days became a cycle of arguments in the house, and my father tried to stop my mother from working. My mother loved me the only way she knew how to love me, by working, by surviving, but she didn't know how to be present, how to hold me, talk to me, or ask if I was okay. She only knew to be silent and never speak about past experiences or pain. That kind of love, she never learned it. I needed more. I needed warm. I needed loved. I needed her eyes to see me, her hands to protect me from the pain I was living through. But she was afraid of my father, of poverty, of failing at life, and that fear made her shut down. For years, I carried a lot of confusion and silence. But one day, I looked deeper. I saw that she was just a girl who had never been mothered or fathered, a girl who had been asked to carry too much too soon, just like me. I began to notice bottles lined up in the kitchen counter, tucked in the drawer, carried in quiet hand. He couldn't hold a job, and slowly but surely, he abandoned the music that once gave him life. I grew up in a very toxic, stressed environment. I was just a little girl climbing a dresser, reaching for something higher, maybe something I thought would make me feel bigger than I was. I slipped. I fell. And as I fell, it hurt both my legs. And all I remember, my father just standing there. No hands reached out. No voice asked if I was okay. That was when I noticed that I had no comfort from him. In the 1970s, kids filled the fire escape with laughter and play. Most of my childhood in Alphabet City was spent on the fire escape, playing with paper dolls, pretending my towel was my long hair, building houses out of cardboard. I spent most of my little life hiding in my bedroom closet, creating families out of paper. A soft breeze pushes against the thin curtains. A young boy's face appears, peering inside my bedroom window. My mother storms in impatiently, arms crossed when I yell for her. She locked me back into the bedroom and ordered me to sleep. My mother then turns and looks. There was nothing there at first, and then she looks up. A shadowy figure of a boy scrambles onto the rooftop, vanishing into the night. My mother then stiffens when she sees my father walks into the bedroom, and then she closes the window firmly and she says nothing to comfort me. The following next day, my mother spoke without emotions, and she told me that the boy was found dead in the back alley. I was no more than 5 years old, and it scarred me for life. Imagination became my closest friend, my closest companion, and let my imagination protect me. I learned to fold bandages, to count breaths, and to hold an ice pack close to my cheeks and pretend it didn't ache. And when I finally returned to school, I discovered something I had almost forgotten. People could be gentle and kind. Uncle Louis was the silly one. He was huge and scary, and he wasn't a perfect man, always a funny guy. He made me laugh and smile when we were all around each other. When I was sad, he played the harmonica until I laughed through my tears. Those moments taught me something powerful, that love doesn't have to be perfect to heal. I admit all the chaos, there were moments of love, pure, gentle, unexpected love. It came from the men who showed me that kindness could live in the same world as pain. My uncles were my quiet protectors, my escape from fear. I still remember their smell of cologne, that scent of warmth and safety. Every time I visited them, I smelled it. I felt calm, as if the world stopped spinning for just a little while. During the weekends, my grandmother would take us to Uncle Chito's apartment in the Tremont area of the Bronx. Uncle Chito was my favorite uncle. We would stay for the whole weekend to escape my father's wrath. He greeted me with huge hugs and kisses. He had the sweet sweat smell of Old Spice. He had parties and food all night until dawn. I would sit in the kitchen helping him make his pasteles con arroz y gandules. The family had many laughters and memories, and that was where I learned how fathers were towards their daughters and wives. He was a family man. Sometimes the memories we don't understand becomes the ones that shape us for life. Life moves you whether you're ready or not. Then I learned not all storms come from the sky. It was every argument, it felt like a storm with no end. The sound of his rage became my lullaby. My father once walked up and down the Spanish Harlem streets wearing a machete wrapped around his waist. All throughout my childhood, I saw how they took my father away. Hospitals, institutions, evaluations. He came home the same or worse. No one knew what to do with a Puerto Rican black man who talked to voices. They called him crazy, a monster. I called him Papi. In 1975, my family moved to Jackie Robinson housing projects in East Harlem. The skyline was different, the sounds were different, but my invisible injuries came with me. The kind that no one could see, but I carry deep inside. I experienced years of emotional toxification, the tension, the fear, the silence. His words were sharp like broken glass. My father's voice filled the apartment with rage, his anger aimed at me, at my pets, at life itself. He hated the world for taking everything from him, and that hate lived inside his mind. As I began to grow, so did his fury. My changing body became a reminder that time was moving, that control was slipping from his hands. But I never stopped trying to understand him. He wasn't born a monster. He was a man broken by loss, by poverty, by the silence of a system that never listened. And the world never gave him time to grieve. In the 1970s, growing up in the projects, no one paid too much attention to us. Domestic violence back then wasn't taken seriously. It was just a family thing. To the outside world, this was just another apartment in the Jackie Robinson housing project. But inside the house, it was a place where I had to learn how to grow up to survive chaos. I watched my father spin out of control many times. He was trapped inside of a mind and illness that had already taken control of him. And I learned early that love and violence can live in the same household. There are memories from childhood that never fade, not because they were special, but because they bruised their way into your spirit. For me, it was the moments when my father placed me in the center of our living room, my own little island, surrounded by fear. He would drag the kitchen pots from across the floor, setting them up like a drummer preparing for a show. And then my father would turn on the record player and play his favorite salsa music, blasting the music so loud across the hall that neighbors can hear it through the walls. I sat there because he demanded it. After the beatings, my dad made sure I didn't run, I didn't hide, and I didn't fall apart. My dad wanted me to watch him play, to witness his anger transform into music. While he struck those pots with a fury that matched the rhythm, each hit felt like it traveled across the room and it landed right back into my chest. The louder the music played, the smaller I became. The room was filled with sound, but my childhood felt mute. At home, I didn't have the protection that every child deserves. The safety, the comfort, the shield of family. Things most children take granted for were not there for me. Not having the protection of my family was too unbearable. It made the world outside even harsher. It made the bullying feel like a double punishment. Hurt from the outside and silence from the inside. I was a little girl caught between two worlds, Spanish at home, English outside. But English wasn't just the language I needed for school. It became a weapon I needed to defend myself. The bullies made sure of that. They taunted the way I spoke, the way I looked, the way I carried myself, and every insult pushed me closer to the edge of silence. I remember standing there in the backyard, full of kids, trying to understand their words, trying to answer back with a language that still felt heavy on my tongue. I had no choice but to learn English quickly, not from curiosity, but from fear. I needed the words to protect myself. I needed to understand the voice that no one else was able to offer me. But the hardest part wasn't the language, it was the loneliness. It was wishing someone at home would step in, someone who would say, "Leave her alone," or "You're beautiful," or even, "I am proud of you." Instead, I faced the world alone. Those days shaped me. They sharpened my courage. They forced me to grow before I was ready. And they taught me that everything the bullies tried to shame, my skin, my hair, my roots, was my power. Art class was my sanctuary in elementary school. The smell of crayons and the softness of paintbrushes, bristles, softened my mind. The freedom to draw anything I wanted, it all gave me a sense of peace I couldn't find at home. In those moments, colors helped me to breathe and imagine beyond fear. Art wasn't a subject class, it was my quiet place. Saturday mornings became my secret classroom. I spent most of my little life in my bedroom, confined. I wasn't allowed to make friends or hang outside. While the rest of the world slept in, I sat close to the television, letting those childhood programs teach me the things my life at home never did. On that screen, I saw families who loved each other, fathers who listened, protected, and showed up. I watched sons and daughters being hugged and being heard, being guided with patience instead of fear. Those shows became the place where I learned what kindness looked like. When the sun was hot during the summertime and the days seemed endless, that little paper bag or tray meant everything to me. We didn't always have enough food at home, so summer lunch wasn't just a meal, it was a blessing. To sit down and eat without worry. For a moment, life felt lighter. No drama, no hunger, and no fear. Looking out the window, I also remembered Johnny Pump. In the middle of those hot East Harlem summers, when the sun fell heavy on our backs and the building trapped every ounce of heat, the kids would run down the streets. And they had a simple way to breathe again. Those Johnny Pump summers were the rare moments when the streets became our playground. The water exploded into the streets like a celebration. The kids ran up and down the streets in every direction, barefooted, laughing, slipping on the water pavement, letting the cold water wash over their faces. There was no fear. All the kids was just having a great time. In those moments, the life and hope I saw outside became the promise held deep inside that one day I would rise beyond the walls that tried to keep me contained. I never felt contempt with neither of my parents. My relationship with my father was built on contradictions. Most days were heavy, unpredictable, and unsafe. But once in a great while, there were moments that looked like normalcy. One sunny weekend, we took a trip to Orchard Beach in the Bronx. Something rare enough to feel almost unreal. So we rolled the number 6 trip. The cars were packed tight, and I remember the people pressed together like sardines, no air conditioning, the heat sticking to our skin. Coolers knocked against knees, radios blasted salsa and soul, voices overlapping in every language New York carried. I watched my father every movement, terrified of the moment his silence might turn into rage. On the trains and buses, I wasn't a child, I was his guard, praying no one would provoke him because whatever happened to him would come home with me. By the time we reached Pelham Parkway, chaos followed us to the bus stop. People argued, shoved, fought to skip lines. It was loud, tense, impatient, yet alive. In that crowd, I saw my father differently, not a man who ruled over home with fear, but as one more New Yorker navigating the same frustration as everyone else. For a brief moment, he wasn't a monster or a hero. He was just a man trying to get to the beach. That very day didn't heal the wounds. It didn't erase the harm, but it gave me clarity. Love didn't disappear completely, but it was inconsistent, fragile, and overshadowed by damage. Those rare outings were not proof of safety, and I've learned this truth. A few good moments do not outweigh sustained harm. They simply explain why the confusion lasted so long. Whether he was medicated or not, as a child I didn't have the language for mental illness. Walking one day with my mother a few steps behind her, I saw my father approach her, and he, in front of witnesses, he struck her, slapped her, grabbed her by the arm, and demanded that we turn back home. That moment, I learned how rage could spill from home into the streets. These were the moments that I grew up along with my father, what anger can do to a child. Because fear had already taught me to be cautious. It was one scary night. My doorknob slowly turned. Someone was trying to enter my bedroom. It was too dark. I couldn't see who it was. It was pitch black. Finally, from the cover, I peeked. It was my naked father. I remember seeing his body and feeling my mind leave before my body could follow. Terror has a way of shutting everything down. The next following morning, I immediately got dressed and told my mother. She said I was dreaming. Instant carried me there. I ran to my teacher. Children tell the truth with their feet before they can say it out loud. When my mother was called, she didn't protect me. In the girls' bathroom at school, she beat me. She told me she didn't believe me. It was an embarrassment, that it was a curse, a taboo to talk about private family matters. In that moment, I learned a second drama, one that cut just as deeply. She loved my father enough to put me last. That was the day I understood that danger didn't always come from strangers. The safety didn't always come from mothers. My father was her only love, and she saw my father touch me in ways that were wrong. And the fear he planted in me followed me into every night. As my body began to change, so was my hippocampus. I walked into the school with a secret burning inside my chest from the body that didn't know how to rest. Toxic stress was overwhelming. I wet my bed over and over. My boy saved me from the man who should have protected me. Caught between the truth and the man she chose to love. That was the day I realized I was on my own. The school reported what had happened, what had many years been ignored. The court stepped in. In the 1970s, they said it clearly. Either we're removing your children or father must leave. My father was forced out, not by love, but by law, and therefore he was sent to Puerto Rico to live with his older sister. Protection arrived late, but it arrived because my voice made its way through the crack. Protecting my father was all my family wanted to do. And while no one was protecting me, I got to realize that there was a generational pattern I was forced to carry. In the 1970s, the school system weren't unprepared to see a child in danger, a time when children were ignored and trauma was dismissed, silence mistaken for safety. When my father left the home, what I felt was quiet. Home wasn't loud. There was no language, and there was no questions and no permission. There was confusion. Silence had become her armor. Survival had hardened her. How silence becomes a habit. How pain gets passed down when it's never named. But silence does not heal. Truth does. I used to wonder, how can a child feel invisible and exposed at the same time? Our relationship settled into something quiet and distant. We existed side by side, but rarely met emotionally and affectionately. Love was present, but it was guarded. Care was practical, not comforting nor affectionate. She blamed me, and I was so young. Absence of acknowledgement taught me something lasting. That pain could be real and still go unseen, and that I would have to learn how to mother and father myself. Trauma doesn't vanish when it's ignored, it's inherited. Trust was dangerous, and affection came with a cost. Sometimes it comes from the very people you trusted to protect you. There was another betrayer within the family, a quieter one. He showed up in my life in ways that made me feel seen, standing up for me at school, teaching me to dance, taking me to places I've never known, and I felt safe with him. I believed in him. Then one day he handed me a long white envelope, and in the center of it, the word sex. I put my notebook down and I opened it, and inside it said I should come to his bedroom so he could teach me about sex. I was still a child, not even in high school yet, and in that moment I knew it was wrong. And the knowing shattered my journey to womanhood, and I was destroyed by the weight of understanding too soon. And I didn't know what was a healthy connection, and I yearned for love. I grew up among women who stayed quiet to survive. Relatives pretended not to know. Children, as myself, learned early that speaking against your family meant losing everything. The secret wasn't just the act. The secret was that everyone sensed it, and still no one said nothing. It was buried under loyalty, under fear, under the belief that men had needs and women and girls like me back then were expected to endure them. No one warned me, and no one said this was a violation. No one said a child's body was not an offering, and not having my father or anyone to protect me. Instead, my family learned how to stay quiet and look away. That is what I grew up being around women who believe this. And normalization is how abuse survives generation after generation. Not through desires, but through power, control, entitlement, and of course, silence. The world I grew up in the 1970s, domestic violence was considered private. If something went wrong, I carried it alone. If something was suspected, the women around me that I lived with looked away. Child sexual abuse was rarely reported, almost never believed. Witnessing matrimonial rape was not yet a crime. I was not able to express or to give any opinion or talk about what had happened to me. I stayed quiet out of fear, dependence, and survival. Relatives convinced themselves it wasn't happening. Gossip with neighbors and family was a common thing back in the day. And when I learned speaking against family, it was a capital punishment, and I learned it at an early age, before my teenage years. And I was disbelieved and abandoned by favoritism. And it also taught me about families. Protecting the image mattered more than protecting me. I didn't feel rescued. I was displaced. This was the moment everything shifted. The moment the story left the walls of our home. Through adolescence, I began to recognize part of my father in myself. I walked through a valley of deep shadow, carrying a deep depression and a smile that reminded me of the time when I spent with my dad. It was a time where I had to figure out who I was, confused and alone in a world that I had to defend all by myself. Without a father to anchor me, I entered the world confused about love, safety, and who I was allowed to be. Silence didn't save me, it saved the lie. I was told to forget so others wouldn't have to face what happened. But instead, silence became a generation pattern of harm. In junior high school 45 and in Julia Richmond High School, I suffered suicidal thoughts. It was all I had in me, and I had to pretend. A time where I tried to make friends and I kept people at a distance because I didn't know how to share what I was carrying. Silence became the family language. To survive, I learned to forget, blocking my childhood not because it was gone, but because remembering was hurting me too much. It made me the outsider, the black sheep, easy to erase. For a long time, my life was shaped in silence by fear. I grew up learning how to survive before I ever learned how to be held. When my father was gone, I didn't find peace right away. I found stillness. And in that stillness, I chose something different. Love finally entered my life through my firstborn son, Andrew. Years later, I returned to Puerto Rico, not to reopen wounds, but to stand in what remained. I brought my first son to meet his grandfather, your first grandson. No more generational pattern. You, Daddy, were still medicated when I went to see you. Still distant, but your presence, our presence, stands. Still shaped by an illness that stole so much of our time together. And yet, in that moment, something mattered. Presence mattered. I no longer hold back my voice to protect broken families and broken systems. I choose to remember without losing myself. I choose to love without denying the truth. I've learned to walk forward, not alone, but free. I will always love you, Daddy. Abuse survived because silence was the rule. Calling it out is not rewriting history. It is finally telling the truth history refused to hear.
Fathers, be the memory that your daughter will have that will stay with her forever. Stay present in small moments, in quiet gestures, in daily choices that matter more than words. Love her, even when it's hard, even when you feel unprepared. Your presence shapes her world. Your love, however imperfect, can be the foundation that makes her move forward in strength forever.
Maribel, Manhattan, no me engañes, mulato. Dale